The Vrexian mining colony on Theta 7 had stood for 3 generations, a testament to efficiency and order. The crystalline caves beneath the surface held precious veridium ore, and the Vrexian collective had optimized every aspect of extraction. They were a logical species, cold and calculating, who measured worth in productivity and resources. They had not accounted for Jackson. Commander Zelthax reviewed the sensor logs with growing irritation. An unregistered human vessel had entered their airspace 17 hours ago, broadcasting distress signals about engine failure. The ship had crashed in Sector 12, dangerously close to their mining operations. A human, Zelthax clicked his mandibles in disgust. They always claim accidents. His subordinate, Krella, flickered her antennae nervously. The vessel appears genuinely damaged, Commander. Should we assist? Leave it. If the human survives, we'll deal with the trespassing charges later. We have quotas to meet. What neither of them knew was that Jackson Reynolds, former engineer and current freelance problem solver, was already very much alive and extremely curious about the strange sounds coming from beneath the crash site. Jackson pulled himself from the wreckage of the Lucky Break, spitting dust and muttering creative profanities. His ribs ached, his head throbbed, and his ship, his beautiful junker of a ship, was now scattered across 50 meters of alien rock. Well, he said to nobody in particular, could have been worse. Could have landed in a volcano. He activated his emergency beacon and began assessing his situation. Breathable atmosphere, check. No immediate threats, check. Weird humming sound coming from underground. Concerning, but check. Then he heard it, faint, almost imperceptible beneath the humming, a sound that made his chest tighten with recognition. Crying, young crying. Jackson had 3 nephews back on Earth. He knew that sound. Son of a... He grabbed his portable scanner and emergency kit. This is how people die in horror movies, Jackson, walking toward creepy sounds underground. But his feet were already moving. The Vrexian mining operation was a marvel of efficiency. Every tunnel calculated, every support beam optimized. They extracted maximum ore with minimum waste. The indigenous creatures, small, furry beings the Vrexians called parasites, had been efficiently contained when they'd interfered with operations. Specifically, they'd sealed an entire family of the creatures in a collapsed tunnel 2 days ago. The adult creatures had attacked mining equipment trying to protect their young. The Vrexians had responded with typical efficiency. Collapse the unstable tunnel, seal it, continue operations elsewhere. Problem solved. Except the young were still alive, trapped in an air pocket with diminishing oxygen and no escape route. Their distress calls echoed through the rock, unheard by anyone who cared. Until Jackson found the service entrance. Okay, so we've got an unauthorized mining operation, definitely some kind of cover-up, and Jackson's scanner picked up the life signs. Oh hell, there's something alive down there. The service entrance was poorly concealed, clearly meant for emergencies the Vrexians didn't want publicized. Jackson's engineering background made short work of the sealed door. He'd broken into worse places for better reasons. The tunnel descended sharply, supported by hastily erected Vrexian architecture. Jackson recognized the signs of a rushed job, the kind of construction that said, "We don't care about safety, only speed." "Not up to code," he muttered, running his hand along a support beam. "Not even close." Then he heard them clearly, high-pitched whimpers, scared and desperate. Jackson quickened his pace, his headlamp cutting through the darkness. He found them in a collapsed section, 3 small creatures huddled together behind a wall of rubble. They looked like a cross between otters and foxes, with large, intelligent eyes that tracked his every movement. They were terrified. "Hey, little ones," Jackson said softly, approaching slowly. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The largest cub hissed weakly, trying to protect the others. Jackson's heart broke. "Yeah, I get it. Strange alien shows up, you don't know if I'm here to help or hurt. He sat down cross-legged, making himself smaller, less threatening. Here's the thing though, I'm really good at getting things unstuck. It's kind of my specialty. He pulled out a ration bar, broke off a piece and slid it toward them. The cubs didn't move. Fair enough, trust issues, I respect that. Jackson began unpacking his tools. I'm gonna start clearing this rubble, you just sit tight. Commander Zelthax was having an extraordinarily bad day. First, the human ship had crashed. Now, that same human had broken into their mining facility and was somewhere in the lower tunnels. Find him, Zelthax ordered. Use non-lethal force if possible, lethal if necessary. Commander, Krella hesitated, he's in Sector 12 Delta. That's the sealed collapse zone where we... I know where it is, Zelthax snapped. Which makes this even more problematic. If he discovers those creatures, it could create complications. The Vrexian Collective didn't technically condone cruelty. They simply didn't recognize non-productive indigenous life as worthy of resource expenditure. It was a subtle distinction that allowed them to operate in moral gray areas. A human discovering trapped cubs would not see the subtlety. Jackson worked for 3 hours, carefully removing rubble while talking to the cubs. He told them about Earth, about his nephews, about the time he'd accidentally adopted a cat that turned out to be a very confused alien creature on a diplomatic mission. That was a fun incident report to file, he said, moving another rock. Anyway, the ambassador was cool about it. We still send each other holiday cards. The cubs had slowly crept closer. The smallest one, which Jackson had mentally named Orla because of a distinctive orange patch on her ear, had even sniffed his hand. Making progress, Jackson grinned. You guys realize I'm the good kind of trouble, right? That's when he heard the marching footsteps. Jackson stood, placing himself between the cubs and the tunnel entrance. 6 Vrexian guards emerged, weapons drawn. Human, the lead guard clicked in Galactic Standard. You are trespassing. Step away from the creatures. Yeah, that's not happening, Jackson replied calmly. See, these creatures are kids, trapped kids. And I don't know what kind of operation you're running here, but where I come from, we don't seal children underground and forget about them. They are indigenous parasites that interfered with mining operations. They're cubs, there's a difference. Jackson's jaw tightened. Here's how this is going to go. I'm taking them out of here. You can try to stop me, but I promise you the paperwork will be legendary. The lead guard's weapon hummed to life. Final warning, human. Behind Jackson, Orla made a small, frightened sound. Something in Jackson's expression changed, hardened. You know what the galaxy doesn't understand about humans, Jackson said quietly, his hands moving to his equipment belt. We're really stupid about kids, any kids, doesn't matter what species. You threaten them, you hurt them, you trap them underground. He pulled out a small device and we get creative. He triggered the portable EMP. The device was illegal in 7 systems, which is exactly why Jackson owned 3 of them. The Vrexian weapons died instantly, along with their armor systems and communications. Run, Jackson suggested pleasantly. The guards ran. Jackson turned back to the cubs. Okay, new plan. We're leaving now and we're doing it fast. He cleared enough rubble to create a passage, then gently scooped up the smallest cub, Orla, who had collapsed from exhaustion. The other 2 followed hesitantly. The journey back to the surface was tense. Alarms blared. More guards were coming. But Jackson had mapped every structural weakness on his way down, and he'd been in tighter spots. When they emerged into daylight, Jackson found himself surrounded by Vrexian security forces. At their center stood Commander Zelthax. You have stolen collective property and... I've rescued trapped children from a deliberately collapsed tunnel, Jackson interrupted, holding Orla protectively. Children you left to die. There's a difference, and I've recorded everything. Zelthax's mandibles clicked nervously. You have no authority here. No, but they do. Jackson pointed upward. 3 ships had just entered orbit, 1 from the Galactic Council, 2 from enforcement divisions. Jackson's emergency beacon hadn't just called for rescue, it had automatically transmitted his suit camera footage to every relevant authority within range. The galaxy was watching. 6 weeks later, Jackson sat in a hearing room on the council station, Orla curled up sleeping in his lap. The Vrexian mining operation had been shut down. The Cubs had been reunited with surviving adult members of their species. Jackson had been fined for unauthorized entry, illegal use of an EMP device, and 17 other violations. He'd also been offered a job as a Galactic Council inspector for indigenous species protection. The Council recognizes, the adjudicator stated, that while your methods were questionable, your intentions were admirable. How do you plead to the charges? Jackson looked down at Orla, who'd refused to leave his side since the rescue. Guilty on all counts. I'd do it again. The adjudicator's expression, insofar as a being made of crystalline energy could have an expression, seemed almost amused. Typical human. The fine is suspended. Don't make us regret this. As Jackson left the hearing room, Orla still in his arms, he couldn't help but smile. The lucky break was being repaired at council expense. The Cubs were safe. And somewhere, the Vrexian Collective was learning a hard lesson about what happens when you mess with kids while a human is nearby. Even if that human showed up by accident. Orla chirped sleepily and Jackson scratched behind her orange ear. Yeah, kid, let's go home. After all, accidents happen. But in Jackson's experience, the best ones were always on purpose.